Basilar part of the occipital bone.
Basilar part of the occipital bone. Basal part of the occipital bone.
Optic canal.
Optic canal. This is optic canal. You may see this is optic canal.
Superior orbital fissure.
Superior orbital fissure. You may see between lesser wing of the sphenoid bone and between greater wing of the sphenoid bone.
Inferior orbital fissure.
Inferior orbital fissure here between maxilla and sphenoid bone.
Vomer.
Vomer, lower part of the nasal septum. This is vomer.
Inferior nasal concha.
Inferior nasal concha. Do you see here is so broken concha? Do you see? Do you see? Here so broken concha.
Lacrimal bone.
Lacrimal bone. You may see this is right lacrimal bone. This is left lacrimal bone.
Fossa for the lacrimal gland.
Fossa for the lacrimal gland. Fossa lacrimalis. It is depression above than the lacrimal gland.
Nasal bone.
Nasal bone. Right nasal bone. Left nasal bone.
Frontal process of the maxilla.
Frontal process of the maxilla. You may see this is frontal process of the maxilla. This is on opposite side, frontal process of the maxilla.
Zygomatic bone.
Zygomatic bone.
Infraorbital foramen.
Infraorbital open, infraorbital foramen.
Angle of mandible.
Angle of the mandible. Angle of the mandible.
Mental foramen.
Mental foramen. Foramen mentale. Mental opening.
Orbit.
Orbit. Orbit.
Squamous part of the frontal bone.
Squamous part of the frontal bone.
Supraorbital notch.
Supraorbital notch or supraorbital opening. Supraorbital notch or supraorbital opening.
Frontal process of zygomatic bone.
Frontal process of the zygomatic bone. Zygomatic process of the frontal bone.
Zygomatic process of temporal bone.
Zygomatic process of the temporal bone.
Zygomatic process of the frontal bone.
Zygomatic process of the frontal bone.
Temporal fossa.
Temporal fossa. Fossa temporalis.
Styloid process.
Styloid process. Processus styloidus.
Mastoid process.
Processus mastoidus. Mastoid process.
Infratemporal fossa.
Infratemporal fossa. Between infratemporal fossa and between temporal fossa is border infratemporal crest.
Tympanic part.
Tympanic part. You may see this is tympanic part. Only this is tympanic part. You may see only this is tympanic part. It is floor of the external acoustic meatus and tympanic cavity.
Mastoid foramen.
Mastoid foramen. Foramen mastoidum. Mastoid foramen. Foramen mastoidum.
Mastoid notch.
Incomplete medial border of the mastoid process. Mastoid notch.
Head of the mandible.
Head of the mandible or condyle process. Processus condylaris. The same.
Neck of mandible.
Neck of the mandible. Look below than the head. Every time is neck.
External acoustic meatus.
External acoustic meatus.
Lambdoid suture.
Lambdoid suture. Sutura lambdoide.
Mandibular notch.
Mandibular notch. Incisura mandibularis.
Greater wing.
Greater wing of the sphenoid bone. This is greater wing on one side. This is greater wing of another side. This is lesser wing. This is lesser wing.
Zygomatic arch.
Zygomatic arch.
Pterygomaxillary fissure.
Pterygomaxillary fissure. Pterygoid process. Maxilla. Here between them we may enter into the pterygopalatine fossa. You may see here inside pterygopalatine fossa and the door into it is pterygomaxillary fissure because pterygopalatine fossa and pterygomaxillary fissure you will show by same place. pterygomaxillary fissure by which we will go inside into the pterygopalatine fossa.
Foramen magnum.
Foramen magnum.
External occipital protuberance.
External occipital protuberance from which to both sides will contain superior nuchal line. This is inferior nuchal line. This will be external occipital crest. External occipital crest, inferior nuchal line, superior nuchal line, external occipital protuberance, here supreme nuchal line.
Internal occipital protuberance.
Internal occipital protuberance. Internal occipital protuberance.
Groove for the superior sagittal sinus.
Groove of the sagittal superior sinus. Groove of the sagittal superior sinus.
Groove for the transverse sinus.
Groove of the transverse sinus on one side, on another side. It rotates and does groove of the sigmoid sinus. This is groove of the sigmoid sinus.
Occipital condyle.
Condylus occipitalis.
Condylar fossa.
Condyle fossa. Fossa condylaris. Fossa condylaris.
Groove for the sigmoid sinus.
Continuation of the groove of the transverse sinus when it takes the S shape. Groove of the sigmoid sinus.
Pharyngeal tubercle.
Pharyngeal tubercle. Impression on the center of the basal occipital part.
Body of sphenoid bone.
Body of the sphenoid bone. Inside of the body will be sphenoid sinus. The back of the body is called sella turcica, turcic saddle. To both sides will be carotid grooves. Carotid grooves to both sides. The inside here is broken. Sphenoid sinus. The whole back is called turcic saddle. In the center, hypophyseal fossa depression. In front of chiasmatic groove, which connects to optic canals. Chiasmatic groove, you may see. The turcic saddle, hypophyseal fossa, carotid grooves, sphenoid sinus.
Pterygoid process.
Pterygoid process. Processus pterygoidus on left side, processus pterygoidus on right side. Here will be fossa pterygoida, pterygoid fossa. Here inside, give me another. You may see. Processus pterygoidus right, processus pterygoidus left. Medial lamin, lateral lamin, between them pterygoid fossa. In the base of the pterygoid process, pterygoid canal. Here is pterygoid canal.
Round opening.
Foramen rotundum, round opening. Foramen rotundum, round opening. Foramen ovale, oval open. Foramen spinosum, spinosum open. Spinosum opening, oval opening. The round or rotundum opening.
Squamous part of temporal bone.
Squamous part of the temporal bone.
Petrous part of the temporal bone.
Petrous part of the temporal bone or pyramid. Here, petrous part of the temporal bone. Here is squamous part. Here is squamous part. Between them is petra squamous fissure. Petra squamous fissure.
Petrotympanic fissure.
Petrotympanic fissure. This is mandible fossa. Mandible fossa. In the center of it, look here, will be petrotympanic fissure.
Trigeminal impression.
Trigeminal depression for the joining of the trigeminal ganglion.
Arcuate eminence.
Arcuate eminentia. Eminentia arcuata. Tegmentum tympani. Roof of the